We have several special guests with us today. I'm looking forward to having a wonderful afternoon with all of you. For the past 30 years, the Minot Wise Men's Choral Group has opened the Minot Wise Rodeo. I'm very happy to have them here today. They are Darwin Langseth, Jerry Hansen, and Wayne Semeru. They're going to open things up with God Bless the USA.
If tomorrow all the things are gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife, I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. Hey, and I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me, and I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend us still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, the man who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. The man who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
First of all, thank you so much for being here, and we're going to pray in just a second here, but I was sitting back here and listening to these guys, and I watched these young ladies up front, and I kind of felt a tear in my eye, and this has happened to me later in life, and one day I visited with my daughter about this affliction I have, where I seem to want to tear up for things that I never used to tear up for in the past, and she's in an emergency room physician in Bismarck, and she just told me, "Dad, you have low T." Low testosterone. So I'm just telling you, man, it's okay to have low T, and it's okay to cry at things like this, and it's okay to cry when these guys sing, and it's okay to cry when young ladies get awards. So let's remove our hats and give thanks here this morning, or this afternoon. Our God in heaven, what a privilege it is to be here amongst a group of great people. We thank you for this time. We thank you for your blessings. We just ask that you would provide some rain for this land out here and across this state that not only feeds us, feeds our livestock, feeds the wildlife, but feeds many other people besides. We thank you for this time together. We thank you for these inductees. They're special people. We thank you for the chance to honor them, and in turn we get to honor you. We ask that you would be with us this afternoon, and for each one that's here, and for safe travels home. And we pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, guys. Now I've got to go through a list of thank yous. First State Bank of Gulva. Induction sponsors today are the Four Bears Casino and Lodge, Dick Nelson Sales. Dick is one of our board members out of Valley City. Stockman's Livestock, Valley Meats, West Plains Implement, Chamley Financial, Dvorak Motors, Nelson and Diane Hart, the Little Missouri Cattle Company, Joe and Sandy Frenzel, Kay Nelson, Fred Sorensen, who's not here this afternoon because he's at a wedding, T-Bench Roustabout, and Unplugged. And I also have to thank Kay twice because Kay not only was a sponsor, but Kay also donated a scanner to the Hall of Fame and the programming to help us use the scanner. So we're going to digitize a lot of photographs and historic documents. So thank you again, Kay Nelson. I also want to welcome the people who are watching this on the internet today. Thank you, Wild Bill, for getting that lined up. I also want to say a shout out to Russ Danielson and his wife. Russ was a longtime board member. Where are you, Russ? All right, round of applause. Walt and Becky Peel are here as well. Walter wanted me to mention that he's got several canvases for sale in his pickup after the show. And then we had the Rodeo Queen ceremony a little bit earlier today. If you would all stand up, Becky Binstock, Alice Burwell, Lindsay Miller. Are they not here anymore? Are they taking photographs? They're involved, or they're right around the corner. Here they are. Girls, you can stand up except the one in the wheelchair. Please stand up, everybody over here, our lovely rodeo queens. Eva Vagnus, Lindsay Miller, Callie Inler, Megan Hertz, Bailey Grove, and Cody Miller, the director. Thank you, ladies, for helping out as always. And then also Claire Grainer and Ayla Hovland are in that group as well. And we're pleased to announce that the new Miss Rodeo in waiting is Alyssa Burwell today, so congratulations to all of you. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Everybody's got demands on their times, different things to do, so it is nice when you take time out to share an afternoon with like-minded people. Your support, your passion, and your involvement in the Hall of Fame is special. It's refreshing to be among like-minded people who share the vision of North Dakota's legendary Western history, its heritage, and its lifestyle. I also want to mention Shirley Myers, who just recently retired from the board after 19 years. Great individual to work with, and we wish Shirley the best and everything going forward. She's taken some time off to watch her grandchildren rodeo, and it's well deserved. We have a couple of new board members I'd like to recognize. Eva Hepper, who can't be here today. Her daughter's in the college finals in Casper, Wyoming. Nelson Hart isn't here because he had some eye surgery, but we do have a new friend of mine, Ivan Johnson, and his family are here. I got to meet them, and where are they? There they are. Nice guys. He went through his first board meeting, did real well. He's going to be a nice addition to the hall. I'm going to recognize the board members. Dick Nelson from Valley City. Dick, where are you? Thank you, Dick. And he's also going to be in charge of the annual meeting in Valley City, so he's going to work hard for free for a long time. Sue Moser. Sue, she's having her 30th anniversary next week, so let's have a hand for that. Ron Kramer. Ron, where are you in the moment? There they are. We stuck Ron with the job of arranging the Arizona get-together in January, since so many of us become snowbirds, so they always do a nice job on that, and I thank you for that. Steve Tomac wasn't able to make it today, but he is featured in the new movie that we've got at the Hall of Fame, so if you haven't seen that, check that out. I guess I'm the longest serving board member now for the Hall, so if you stick around long enough, they let you MC. You talked to Gerald already. He's made his announcements. Fred Sorensen is gone. Fred, besides being a great vice president, he also bought us an ice machine. These are all these unsung things that people don't necessarily know about, but we needed an ice machine, and Fred went out and bought one for us, and it's a nice one. Connie Sunby, I call her the Energizer Bunny. There she is. And our financial wizard, Marv Semero, please. Also, I want to recognize Jim Chamley, our ex-president. He helped us get on the path that we're on today. He's always been there. He's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of support. I'd like to salute you. Hats off to our executive director, Rick Thompson, as well as we've come a long way with Rick. He's really helped us get to where we're at. Becky Schaaf and Irene Johnson, some of the staff that keep us corralled and going in the right direction. Ike, our membership guy, is right there. He's trying to hide, but Ike's right there. He's giving us a wave. Al Bjornson is here somewhere. He's our trustee chair. And I also have to recognize Sandy Frenzel. She is a dynamite person that helps get our mortgage down to nothing. We're down to 241,000. When we started, we were at about 900 some thousand. So we've really come a long way, and we're going to make some efforts to try and get that retired. Tess, Howie, crew, all the staff. I know I'm missing some people that I should be saying thanks to, but thank you. You know who you are. We're up to 262 trustees. We've had exciting things go on. We were featured on the Red Steagle show somewhere west of Wall Street this year. We've had just good things happening on a constant basis, and I think it's the old saying, the harder we work, the luckier we get, and I think that's part of it. But now I want to welcome a special friend that's here today, Attorney Roger Minch, who is a native North Dakotan. He grew up in Fargo, North Dakota. He works for the Circlin Law Firm and has been there since 1978. He's been listed in the best lawyers in America for the past 25 years. That's no easy accomplishment. He specializes in banking, business, and commercial law. Back in the 1960s, much like my family, his father and mom would pack the family up in their station wagon, pack the scamper camper, and drive all over the country during summer vacations. They would camp both in Medora and at the old burning coal vein campground south of town, and that's when Roger fell in love with the Badlands and Medora. He returns every year to recharge his inner batteries, and he is the man that has generously donated the new bronze collection that we have at the Hall of Fame. That started about a year and a half ago. He called and asked if the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame would be interested in receiving some bronzes for display, and I said we certainly would. I readily agreed to work with him on the project, and I curated what pieces were collected for the collection, and we now have a total of 21 bronzes. We have a couple on loan to one of the banks up in Watford City to help spread the message of the Hall of Fame and to get people to travel to come see us. This is from the Michelangelo Foundry run by Treasure Investments Corporation. It's a world-class foundry that's located in the state of Washington. And so, Roger, would you please stand up and get a well-deserved round of applause? If you haven't been to the hall to see the bronzes, it is a great collection. There's everything from stagecoaches to horses, cattle swimming across rivers, wild horses. We have some Remingtons as well. Lorenzo and Lauren Gilleri are the artists on this, but it's really beautiful work, and it's a heck of a gift going forward. So again, Roger, thank you. All right, now we're going to have some fun. Also, I got to thank Jim one more time for helping us line up our speaker for the day, Pat Day. He is the only jockey who has won the Kentucky Derby that I've had the honor of shaking his hand. So he's my favorite. Coincidentally, he is 1 year and 1 week older than me to the day. He has won 9 Triple Crown races, 12 Breeders' Cup races. He was the leader for career Breeder Cup wins at the point when he retired. He's won a total of 8,803 races. He holds career riding records at Churchill Downs and at Keeneland. Pat, rather than me, would you please come up?
Hello. Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for that warm introduction, Ross. I appreciate that. What an absolute joy and a privilege and a pleasure and a tremendous blessing it is to be here with you all today and throughout this entire weekend. Jim picked me up in Dickinson on, I think it was Thursday afternoon, and the time has just gotten better as we've been here. It's been a joy to be here with wonderful folks here in North Dakota, and I'm certainly privileged to have the opportunity to speak with you just a little bit right now. And I was born and raised in a farming, ranching community in Colorado. My father was a body and fender repairman by trade, and by the way, him and my mother were both from South Dakota, just a little bit south of here. But they didn't like the wind blowing down the plains, and so as soon as I got married, they headed west, and we wound up in the mountains of Colorado. I was raised in a place just west of Vail, Colorado. When we moved in there, Vail was not in existence. It was very sparsely populated. My father didn't want to raise his kids in town. He worked in town, but he was willing to make that 17-mile drive every day so his kids could grow up in the country. And it was a great childhood. We grew up with a couple of ponies. We had chickens. We had a cow that we had to milk twice a day. My brother milked in the morning. I milked it in the evening, or vice versa. It was just a wonderful childhood looking back. Of course, I was envious of my town friends that got to run the streets and play with their friends, and I had to walk to the top of the mountain in order to meet my friends from the other side to play. But looking back, it was just an awesome childhood, and we attended church. We went to the Lutheran church. I was confirmed in the Lutheran faith at a very early age, and I wish I could say that in the formative years of my life that my relationship with the Lord was vitally important. It wasn't. Going to church seemed to be important. We loaded up and went every week religiously. We did say a prayer over the evening meal, but that seemed to be the extent of our conversation about the Lord or his role in our life. I was very fortunate the year after I got confirmed in the Lutheran faith. There was a family from Texas moved up into our neighborhood there in Colorado, and they were Southern Baptist by denomination, and I'm not here to denigrate or promote any denomination. I hope at the conclusion of my talk you realize the joy, thrill, and pleasure of having a personal relationship. It's not about a religion. It's not about a denomination. It's about a personal relationship with Jesus the Christ, the Son of the living God, who died on the cross for your sins. But anyway, they moved up into our neighborhood, and I got a job working for them. So I'd ride my pony over to their place, and I'd do a few menial tasks around the ranch house and clean up the barn or whatever you could do at 13, which I'm sure out in this part of the country it's significantly more than what I was doing for her. But anyway, she would call me in at noon, and she'd prepared a little lunch, and she would bless the meal, and we would eat, and I'd finish up, and she would tell me what she wanted me to do, and I'd go back to work. Well, this went on for about a week, and when I finished up eating one day, I said, I guess I'll go back to work, and she said, would you wait just a minute? I'd like to talk to you. Well, by that time in our neighborhood, they'd gotten the reputation of being Jesus freaks and Bible thumpers. You see, they wanted to talk about Jesus. They wanted to bring Jesus into every aspect of their lives. And so I was, when she said, can I talk to you, I was a little concerned. I thought that she was probably going to try to preach to me a little bit. And subsequently she did. She brought out a felt board with all the figurines from Sunday school and proceeded to take me all through the life and times of our Lord and Savior. Now, I wasn't listening attentively to every word she said. I was concerned that somebody was going to come in the door and find me in this very embarrassing situation. An elderly lady with all this paraphernalia on the table and preaching to me, right? So when she completed delivering the message of salvation through belief on the Lord Jesus Christ, she asked me if I would pray with her. Well, by this time, I was willing to do anything just to get out of the house. And I said, yeah, let's. So she reached across the table and took a hold of my hands, and she said, just simply repeat after me. And subsequently, she led me in what we come to know as the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer, if you don't know, is just when you acknowledge that, yes, you are a sinner. The Bible is very clear. We've all sinned and come short of the glory of God. And that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, died on the cross for your sins, was resurrected, seated at the right hand of the Father, and by faith, you invite him into your heart. So she said, dear Lord Jesus. And I said, dear Lord Jesus, I believe you're the Son of God. I believe you're the Son of God. I was anxious to get out of the house. And so when she said amen, I said amen and jumped up from the table ready to bolt out the door. What stands out in my mind at that moment in time was the look on Mrs. Allen's face. She was absolutely radiant, and tears were running down her cheeks. Now, at that time, I thought she'd absolutely lost it. I thought she'd gone plumb over the top, and out the door I went. And I didn't remember that particular event until a number of years later. It didn't have a profound effect on my life, on the way I lived, or the way I thought, or the way I taught, or the things that I'd done. Mother and Dad laid a solid foundation. My dad was a man of his word. If my dad shook your hand and said if something was going to be done, you could count on two things. Either it would get done, or you could go to his funeral because he would die endeavoring to get it done. The character of the Western lifestyle. Men and women of character, men and women of honesty. Their bond is their word. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And that's the way my father raised us. A day's work for a day's pay. You do the best that you can. And it was a good foundation, but I had a little bit of a wild hair. Growing up, I didn't grow up a lot, but growing up, I had a bit of a wild hair. So late in high school, I got a little bit rowdy. I was participating in rodeos at the time. I was on the rodeo team, having a very minimal amount of success, but I loved the lifestyle. I loved the camaraderie and the competition. And so out of high school, I had this dream of being a professional bull rider. And so I was pursuing that career with a very limited amount of success. And in the course of my travels, I met people that either they suggested or recommended or inquired as to whether I'd ever thought about being a jockey. No, I want to be a bull rider. I'd never even seen a race on TV. I knew nothing about racing. The idea of being a jockey just didn't even appeal to me. But one guy gave me his name and number, and he said, listen, if you have an interest, give me a call. I know some people will help you get started. And I don't know today if that was because he saw something in me that I didn't know was there, or if he was trying to save my life and get me out of the arena. Well, either way, it was great counsel. And so in the fall of 72, at the end of the rodeo season there in western Colorado, and without a job, I said, yeah, let me go be a jockey. So I gave him a call, and he made some calls. I talked to him. He made a few calls, and he got me a job on a thoroughbred farm in California, a place called Riverside Thoroughbred Farm. And so I went out there after the first of the year and sat down with the farm owner and manager, and they said, "You want to be a jockey?" I said, "Yes, I want to be a jockey." Didn't have a clue what I was trying to become. They said, "You need to be on the farm for 2 to 3 years, learn the business from the ground up," and let me tell you, that's the correct way to go. And at the end of that 2 to 3 years, depending on how quickly you catch on, we'll send you to the racetrack. You'll go to work for a trainer. You'll experience life at the racetrack. You'll watch the races, study the films, do that for another year. You'll be ready to start riding. And I'm thinking, 2 to 3 years to learn how to ride? I mean, I've been riding horses all my life. It can't be that difficult, right? But at the end of a month, I knew that that's not what I wanted to do. No way I was going to stay on that farm for 2 to 3 years. But that's where I realized today that God had his hand upon me, was guiding and directing my footsteps in spite of my not acknowledging any part of him or having any role of him in my life. Because a few months later, I found myself on a racetrack in Arizona. And I became friends with a man that had been a professional team roper. He'd started training racehorses a few years previous to that. And him and I became the best of friends, and he let me start exercising these horses. And by the middle of the summer, I told Carl, I said, "Man, I want to ride races. I want to get in the action. I want to compete." He said, I'll let you ride a few of my horses, but, you know, I can't let you ride everything. And so the first horse I rode ran second, got beat a nose. Lyle Murray, the boy that beat me, he said there was no way. He said, "No way I could let you break your maiden or win your first race on your first out." He said, "You need to learn what you're doing." So 2 weeks later, the last race of the day on a horse called Four Blunge in a driving rainstorm in Prescott, Arizona. And this horse come charging down the middle of the racetrack and got up in the shadow of the wire to win the race and break my maiden. Won my first race, July 29th, 1973. A few months later, I went with Carl to California. He took a horse out to run at the LA County Fair in Pomona. Horse called Continental Kid that he had claimed for $3,500. He'd turned him out for a year. He'd had a little beau, and he brought him back, and we'd won a couple of races on him. And Carl took him to California. In racing, you have to have a starter before you can claim horses or buy horses, basically, is what you're doing. But he wanted to start this horse so he could claim some horses there at Pomona to take back to Phoenix for the winter. And so he entered him for $3,500, got thrown out, too many horses. 4, 45, 5. He finally got him into $6,200 down to $6,000, and we thought, way over his head, but we got to get a starter so we can claim some horses. Well, to make a long story short, Continental Kid just run off the screen and won. I come out of the jockey's quarters that evening, and the farm manager was standing there, and when he seen me, he just shook his head and he said, "It is you." He just couldn't believe, you know, when he seen my name in the program, he said, "I wonder if that's that same cocky boy that was on the farm back in January." And then when he seen me ride, he said, "No way. No way you could be doing that, you know, with the limited amount of experience that I had." Well, that's just a testimony to the God-given talent and ability the Lord blessed me with. Over the next 10 years, I had incredible success. I won a number of individual riding titles at various race meets around the country. But you know, when something comes so fast and furious and with very little effort on my part, you have a tendency to kind of take it for granted. I had a real lack of respect for what I had, where I was at, and what was happening. I was compelled to pat myself on the back and take full credit for all the success as if I deserved it, as if I'd done my time and I deserved to win these races. Well, at the end of the racing program, it didn't matter how many races I won, I found myself lacking. There's got to be more. I was looking for higher highs, and drugs and alcohol was readily available. So I got involved with drinking and drugs and carousing around an assorted lifestyle. Testimony to the God-given talent was the fact that I could do that. I could party all night, get on horses in the morning, ride races in the afternoon, and be successful. Again, just testimony to the God-given talent that the Lord had entrusted me with. Well, fast forward a few years, I married a beautiful woman out of Louisiana. Sheila would be married 42 years this June 30th. Awesome woman of God, and she brought some incredible stabilization to my life. But there was, even in marriage, even that completeness that you feel in a marriage relationship, there was something lacking, something missing. In spite of the success that I had, there seemed to be something not right. And so fast forward just a little bit further, in 1982, I found myself in a position to be leading rider in North America. I thought, that's it. I'd had some riding titles, individual titles at various race meets, But I didn't have any national acclaim. I hadn't won any major races around the country that would get anybody's attention. And so I thought, if I could win the national riding title, my name will be up in lights and I'll never have another bad day. Have you ever heard that line before? At some point in time, you're going to reach high enough, you're going to get high enough on the scale, you're going to make enough money, you're going to have a big enough house or a big enough ranch or whatever it is, something in the material world that's going to satisfy. Well, I bought into that. I said, man, if I could win the national riding title, never have another bad day. So we rode hard through the fall of the year. At the time, we were riding in Kentucky, going to New Orleans, and immediately thereafter, man, I'm riding everything they'd run under me. And so the December 31st, I was tied up for a national riding title with Angel Cordero out of New York. He's riding day and night. He's riding in New York in the daytime, across the river at the Meadowlands at night, and boy, we're head and head. First race on the 31st of December, 1972. This horse, not 1972. Whoa, I backed up. 82. This horse had come in from California. It looked like he couldn't get beat. That was going to put me one in front. Man, I'm excited. All right. When the doors opened, this horse dropped. His ground broke out from underneath of him, slapped me on the ground, knocked the wind out of me. And I thought, I'm looking up and I'm going, oh no, this is the way my year is going to end. By the grace of God, it didn't. I didn't get hurt. Got my wind back. Went on and won 2 more races that afternoon. Cordero won 2 races in New York. We're tied up at 395 winners apiece. Only place in North America running on New Year's Eve was a little racetrack in the southwest corner of Louisiana called Delta Downs. I was able to secure a charter flight out of New Orleans, flew to Delta Downs, or Orange, Texas, actually, is the nearest airport, landed there, took a taxi over to the racetrack, rode 2 races. They both won, secured the national riding title. Now, the horse that won the national riding title for me, and I'm sure that you'll recognize this horse's name, a very, very famous horse. His name was Dana's Woof Woof. You've heard of him? Well, he carried me to victory and secured the national riding title. And, of course, my mindset at that time was that you had to celebrate. I mean, when you do something special, you had to celebrate. Well, I was a professional celebrator. I celebrated when the sun come up or the sun went down. I celebrated if the sun didn't shine, I'd celebrate. There was always some reason to celebrate. And so I went on this 2-week bender when I came out of my drug and alcohol-induced stupor and took a personal inventory. The fleeting feeling of winning the national riding title was long gone. Life hadn't changed, and I wasn't fulfilled. As a matter of fact, I found myself very distraught. I've got a beautiful wife, successful career, leading rider in North America, and I'm empty. What's going on here? And in spite of the fact that I had prayed to receive Christ into my heart when I was 13, I didn't have him in the picture. I do remember going out at night, and I guess somewhere in my mind I thought he was hard of hearing, because I went out at night and screamed into the heavens, what am I here for? What is the purpose? It just didn't make any sense. I'm winning races, I'm making money, I've got a beautiful wife, I've got everything the world says is supposed to make me happy. I'm not happy. I'm not content. Well, God didn't answer my prayer, but he let me win the national riding title again in '83. In January of 1984, my wife and I are in Colorado visiting with my family. On January 27th, 1984, she drove me into Denver, put me to the airport, put me on a plane. I flew to Miami, Florida, where I was scheduled to ride in a race the next day. I got into Miami late in the evening, checked into a hotel room, and got in my room, flipped the TV set on, and started getting ready for bed. The program on that particular station was a Jimmy Swaggart televised crusade. Now, many of you probably heard of Jimmy Swaggart. Maybe you haven't, but a very successful television evangelist who even today has a wonderful ministry in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Great man of God. I know he fell from favor. He had, listen, we're all men and women. We're all humans, and we're all eligible to slip and fall. But anyway, Jimmy Swaggart had this televised crusade, and when I'm ready for bed, I didn't think what he was offering was what I needed or what I wanted. I was looking for answers, and I didn't think that Jimmy Swaggart had it. So I ran through the dial on that old TV set. Many of you remember those that you had to turn by hand before they had the remote right by the bed? Yeah? Yep. Well, I had to turn the dial all the way around. It got all the way around the dial back to Jimmy Swaggart, and I go, man, nothing worth watching on TV. I turned it off, went to bed. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I went out, sound asleep. which was highly unusual. I hadn't had a significant amount to drink that day, and usually without a fair amount of alcohol in my system, I'd have a most difficult time going to sleep. My biological clock was completely out of whack, obviously. But that night, I fell asleep, and it was an incredibly deep sleep. I slept so soundly that when I awoke, I thought I'd been sleeping for 6 or 8 hours. It had been an extended period of time. But I woke up to the distinct feeling that I wasn't by myself in that hotel room. And I sat upright in bed. I looked around in the room. I couldn't see anything, but I felt a presence there with me. Now, I don't know if at that moment the Lord prompted me to walk over and turn the TV on, but or whether that was myself hoping that the light, the noise would dissipate, this feeling would leave. And so I walked over and turned the TV on. As the picture materialized on the screen, I realized instantly that I hadn't been sleeping very long. Jimmy Swiggert's still on TV. But as I watched for just a moment, it was at the point in the program when he completed delivering his message of hope and salvation through the cross of Christ. And he was extending the invitation to the viewing audience, to any and all that would care to receive Christ as their Savior. And at that moment, it was like the scales were removed from my eyes. I recognized and realized that the presence there with me was the Spirit of the living God. And what I needed, what I wanted, the missing piece to my puzzle was the living God. And I fell on my knees and wept and cried and invited him into my heart. Or so I said for a number of years thereafter, but I didn't invite him into my heart. He'd been in my heart. I'd put him in the back room. I remember clearly during that period that, I had my back up against the wall given the lifestyle I was living, and there was no help in sight, and I would go, oh, God, help me. And guess what? God helped me. And as soon as he would bound out of the back room and help me, as soon as the dust settled, I put him back in the back room. Well, what I'd done that night in that hotel room, I offered him his rightful place on the throne of my heart, acknowledged him not just as my Savior, but my Lord and Savior, and fully committed my life to him. Instantaneously delivered from the bondage of drugs and alcohol. Haven't had a drink since, haven't had a desire to drink since then. But then I rode the race, got on a plane, went back to Colorado, got with my wife. Now I'm wondering, what do I do now? Should I stay in racing? Should I go to the seminary? Should I be a man? What should I do? And so I got to Arkansas, I got to the racetrack. First morning at the track, a friend of mine was walking around with a guy with a big black cowboy hat on. That got my attention just because I love the Western. Having been a wannabe cowboy, I love the cowboy dress. And so I got my attention. And so this jockey friend of mine, Sammy, said, Pat, come on over here and meet our new chaplain. I didn't know we had an old chaplain. But I went running over there. I said, well, he'll tell me what I should do. He'll give me some direction. So I ran over there, and subsequently Sammy introduced me to this chaplain, Mike Spencer, who happened to be a rodeo clown in the off-season. He would come to Arkansas in the wintertime and be the chaplain. Then he was on the road going to rodeos in the summertime. But he became my spiritual friend and my best friend and spiritual mentor. And so I shared with him my dilemma. I don't know what I should do, Mike, if I should go to the seminary, if I should stay in racing. It was pretty obvious to me at that moment in time that I had been blessed with tremendous talent and ability. As I look back, you don't show up on the farm for a month, bounce around for 2 months, get a job galloping horses, start riding, and a year later be the leading rider anywhere. That's just unheard of, and it's nothing short of miraculous indication of the God-given talent and ability. And so I'm like, if God gives you a talent and ability, shouldn't you use it and do the best you can? Well, of course. But wait a minute, racing revolves around gambling. Can you stay in that environment and profess to be a Christian? Can you live the Christian life in that environment? And so I shared that with Mike, and he came up with the novel idea of praying. He said, let's pray about it. Let's see what the Father has to say. And so we did. We prayed about it, sought the Scriptures. Through that process, the Lord revealed to me that he had saved me to work within racing, not to leave it. Take the talent, take the ability, do the very best that I possibly could, all the while being open to opportunities to give him the praise, the honor, and the glory. And so that's what I've done for the next 22 years. But immediately, a thought crossed my mind. The biggest platform in all of racing is the Kentucky Derby. I'm going to win the Kentucky Derby. I got to get ready. So I got my Bible out. I put together this little mini sermon that I'm sure Billy Graham would have been proud of. But I committed it to memory. I mean, I went in the bathroom when my wife wasn't home. I'd go in the bathroom and I'd give it a what for. I was like, yeah, so that I'd give the full effect. Well, God knew that I wasn't ready in spite of my efforts. And so he let me practice 9 times. But lo and behold, in 1992, blessed me with victory aboard a horse called Lily T in the Derby that year. And that was the absolute highlight of my racing career. But over the next 22 years, we had unparalleled success, went to the top of the heap and stayed there for the most part, won all the major races throughout the country, and all the while taking full advantage of opportunities to give the Lord the praise, the honor, and the glory. I also became involved with the ministry at the Racetrack, the only vehicle that was actively endeavoring to bring the gospel message to the horse racing industry was the Racetrack Chaplaincy of America. I became very involved with and supportive of that ministry and still am to this day. But my heart's desire, my heart's cry for each and every one of us is that we would come to know and to love and to trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. You see, the abundant life in the book of John, the 10th chapter, the 10th verse, it simply says that Jesus came that we might have life and have it abundantly. I thought the abundant life was in success, was in winning races, in making money, or whatever I endeavored to do. But truly, the abundant life is born out of a personal, intimate, ongoing, and ever-growing relationship with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the one who came and died on the cross for our sins. He paid a price, a debt that we couldn't pay. He paid a price he didn't know because we owed a debt we couldn't pay. He died on the cross for our sins. If we believe in our heart, confess with our mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, we shall be saved. And that's my message today and every day. My heart's cry, my heart's desire is that everywhere I go, whoever I meet, that I might be blessed with the opportunity to share with them the gospel message. In John, the book of John, the 3rd chapter, the 16th verse, it's the whole gospel in one verse. It simply says that God, for God, the creator of all of this, creator of all of heaven and all of earth, so loved the world, that's us, that he gave his only begotten Son, that's Jesus Christ, that whosoever would believe on him would not perish, but would have everlasting life. That's the message, that's the hope, that's the gospel, the good news. And that's what I'm here to share with you today. If you know and love and trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, I encourage you in that relationship. And if you don't, I pray that you would come to know and to love and trust in him today. Today is the day of salvation. And on that note, I would like to just pray for you. As I close, I would just like to ask you to close your eyes, bow your heads. If you've accepted Christ into your heart, I pray that this has encouraged you to draw ever closer. If you haven't, I'm going to give you the opportunity right here, right now, to pray and receive Christ as your personal Lord and Savior. So pray as I pray, and then in a moment I'm going to ask you to repeat after me what Mrs. Allen asked me to do so many years ago. So great and awesome God. Father, I just thank you and praise you for your love and your grace and your mercy. God, you are awesome, and it's a joy and a privilege to serve you. I thank you, Father God, for the privilege and pleasure of being here today to share my testimony, our story, Lord, yours and mine, how you brought me out of the mountains of Colorado by way of the rodeo arena and ultimately into the great sport of horse racing, where it was evident that you blessed me with so much ability and talent and opportunities and subsequently the success. And Father, I just give you all the praise and the honor and the glory for that. I thank you for the opportunity to be here today, Lord, as we recognize these that have worked so hard, have given their best with excellence, and are now being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and deservedly so, Father. And I ask your blessings upon them and upon their families, and I thank you for all of what they've done and what they represent. And Father, right now, I pray for everyone here. I pray that if there's one here that doesn't know you, that hasn't prayed that prayer to receive you into their heart, your word simply tells us, if you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, you shall be saved. And so, Father, I'm right now with all eyes closed and heads bowed. I'm going to ask those that have never received you as their Savior and would care to, that they might simply repeat after me, Dear Lord Jesus, I believe that you are the Son of God. I believe that you died on the cross for my sins, and I am eternally grateful. From this moment forward, you are my Lord, you are my Savior, you are my friend. I pray that you would take me, make me, mold me, and shape me into the person of God that you'd have me to be. I thank you for loving me, Lord, and I thank you for all that I have and all that I am. In Jesus' precious and holy name, amen and amen. Thank you all so very much. I failed to take advantage of the opportunity to congratulate the inductees, those that are in the Hall of Fame now and those that are being inducted today, and certainly the Queens, the Queen contest this morning. I'm sorry that only one could win. It appeared to me that there was a number of them that could have been first, and so I know it was a very difficult decision. But congratulations. Thank you again for having me here. Congratulations to the Hall, and Jim, thank you for extending an invitation. And God bless you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Pat. All right. Now let's get to the 2021 induction introducers and speakers. The first category is the Great Westerner. Ron Kramer and Mona, you might as well come up as well, are going to talk on behalf of Don Short.
While Mona's making her way to the stage, I'm just going to introduce my wife, Mona, and she's going to talk about Don Short. Her and her sisters grew up on the Short Ranch. Her father, Jim Jeffries, managed the ranch while Don was serving our state in Washington, D.C. So that's the extent of my talk, and I'm going to turn this over to my wife, Mona, to continue on. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I was supposed to be last, and here I am first. So I'm not ready, but I guess I am. I had the pleasure and the honor to work on the scrapbook and the nomination for Don Short. And he was a candidate in the Great Westerner category several years ago and was defeated. And so we decided it was time that he be renominated and is deserving of a place in the hall. Don and the Short family are considered our family. My dad worked on the Short Ranch and managed the ranch while Don was in Washington, D.C. in Congress. My sisters and I cherish the years we had on the ranch. I would describe Don as a pioneer. Don moved to the ranch as an infant in 1902 with his parents when he was, I think, 3 months old. They traveled to Belfield for their supplies, and the reason they picked Belfield is because they only had to cross the river once. Although Medora was somewhat closer, they had to cross the river 16 times to get to Medora and follow the trail. So they chose Belfield. It was more than a day's travel. They stopped outside of Belfield and stayed overnight and then continued their journey in the morning. And I call that a pioneer. Don's grandmother came to America from England, and as a child, she was pretty musically talented, and she played in a recital for the Queen. So when she came to America, she continued with her music, and they moved a piano down to the ranch because she lived with them down on the ranch. They moved the piano by buckboard down to the ranch, and that's being a pioneer. Don had so many friends, and he was well respected as a congressman and as a smart businessman and a rancher. And he tended the land and lended a hand to many of the neighbors and friends. He gave us this quote, and I quote, "If you believe in this country and treat it right and work hard with it, it will be good to you." So it is my pleasure, and I am so honored to introduce you to the 2021 inductee in the Great Westerner category, Don Short. To accept on his behalf, I introduce you to his youngest daughter, Susie Short Williams. Welcome, Susie, and the rest of the Short family. when Mona contacted me suggesting that she nominate our dad, I had no idea what kind of a journey this was going to be. And it's been awesome. And Mona, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making this event possible. It was all in her hands. And we too appreciate all of you people associated with the Cowboy Hall of Fame for preserving the history of many, many, many deserving North Dakotans. I think that's a wonderful gift to further generations. And Rex Cook, you shared the very best memories of our dad. You painted a beautiful picture of Dad showing the Cowboy Hall of Fame the kind of fellow Don Short was. You know, and growing up, I always knew I had a great dad. But this experience has reminded me, I think, that he not only was a great dad, he was a great North Dakotan, and he was a great American. He cherished every aspect of life in the Badlands, and when he went to Congress to serve North Dakota, it was quite a transition for him to give up his cowboy boots and wear real shoes. And again, thanks to everyone who participated in any way for making this possible. Thank you.
All right, our next category is the pre-1970s rodeo. Harvey Bilodeau is going to introduce Molly Buckholz, who will talk for Dale Carlson. Harvey? I saw you here earlier. Harvey Bilodeau? Oh, there he is.
Good afternoon. My name is Harvey Bilodeau. It's my pleasure to introduce to you today pre-1970 rodeo, Mr. Dale Carlson. I've known Dale Carlson 50 plus years. Known him as a competitor and a contestant, competent rodeo judge, stock contractor. I've served on the board of directors with him, and he's been a true friend all these years. Very instrumental in getting the Rough Rider Rodeo Association started. And him and his wife Mary are still involved with it today. They've done a great job. I think over the years, I don't know if I've met anybody that has devoted as much of their life, done as much for rodeo in North Dakota as Dale Carlson. I think he'll be an exceptional inductee into the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame. Here to represent Dale today is his granddaughter, Molly Buckholz.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank Harvey for that amazing introduction, and I also want to say how grateful I am to be here today to have the opportunity to speak about my grandfather to you and on his behalf. Like most kids, I grew up idolizing my grandfather. He was a cowboy of mythical proportions to me. A John Wayne-esque type, a wizard with a rope, a rival to any competitor. Now I'm 21, and I've watched my grandpa rope, ride, compete, and mentor my whole life. And I learned quickly that it's not wizardry with a rope, but hard work, dedication, and passion, which has grown in me an even deeper sense of admiration for him. If Dale had his way, I would stand up here and talk about everybody but him, but I do want to thank these people that helped my grandfather along the way, because he didn't come from a rodeo family, so it took a lot of outside influence to help him harbor the talent that he truly has. Dale's rodeo journey first began in thanks to Wilford and Sonny Eyre, who helped him learn to rope and even lent him his first horse he ever roped on, Okie. Soon after, he bought his first horse from Bob and Donna Irwin and Dale roped and competed on this horse for several years. Dale also spent quite a bit of time in Oklahoma doing what else but roping and riding. Bob Brock and Tate Hager both provided a home away from home for him and a place to ride and practice. Hurley Lee from Logan helped my grandfather by boarding his horse and gave him the opportunity to rope with his son. Harvey Bilodeau was a fellow competitor and now a good friend of Dale's and a fellow Hall of Fame honoree. My grandpa laughed as he told me Harvey was probably part of the reason he retired from calf roping, because Harvey was just too handy getting off on the right. Harvey's daughter Jessica helped us navigate the mountain of paperwork that it takes to nominate somebody for the Hall of Fame. My grandpa is so grateful to all of these people and many, many more, but I am also so grateful because they helped make him into the man that I get to know and love. My brother, as well as my cousins and I, were blessed with the opportunity to rodeo in the Rough Rider Rodeo Association. Nothing was more fun to me than waking up early, loading up my horse next to my grandpa's in the trailer, and packing into the pickup like sardines to go and cheer each other on and compete in the same arena. My mind is full of memories, like watching my cousins rope while I sat on my grandpa's lap and practiced tying my foot, visiting my grandma in the rodeo office, I'm sure pestering her like crazy while she was trying to get events and results finalized, and working on our roping skills by roping each other and just ripping the feet out from underneath one another. I asked my grandpa to tell me his favorite memory or accomplishment from his rodeo career. It might surprise most of you that it didn't happen in an arena. It wasn't about winning a title or a big payout. My grandpa told me about a rodeo in New Salem he attended that got rained out. He didn't even get to compete. Because of this, he ran into a beautiful woman in a bar, and I now have the privilege to call that woman my grandma. To me, my grandpa's even more incredible in my eyes now than he was when I was 3 years old, and he led me on a horse around a round pen. I'm so grateful that he has received this honor because he is more than deserving. Speaking on Dale's behalf, I know he is honored to have received this distinction, as it truly reflects his love of rodeo and the way of life that it represents. Thank you.
Under the category of Modern Era Rodeo, Connie is going to introduce Phil Hogan.
Good afternoon. A very young, blue-eyed, blonde-haired boy from Williston, North Dakota, always wanted to grow up to be a cowboy. Well, Phil Hogan has done just that, and so much more, and he has done it very successfully through high school rodeo, college rodeo, and even on to the professional level. Phil is the only North Dakota cowboy to win the coveted Linderman Award from the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. Today, Phil resides in Weatherford, Oklahoma, where he is a nationally known horse trainer, as well as conducting clinics throughout the United States and abroad. Phil is also featured on RFD TV, giving training tips for young and old. Even with all of these accomplishments, Phil Hogan remains humble and calls North Dakota home. We are proud to call him one of our own. Help me in welcoming our personal friend and a 2021 Modern Era Rodeo inductee into the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame, Mr. Phil Hogan.
You know, anytime there's an individual award like this, you know, they got to put one name on a plaque or a buckle or whatever, but you know, pretty much everybody here and everybody that's ever been inducted into this Hall of Fame or any other Hall of Fame or won any individual award, it's maybe having some health issues. Might be got some low T showing up here. I didn't know this was going to be a health checkup here. Just be patient. I'll get through it. But anyway, you know, if I could get everybody up here that's helped me, I mean, yeah, I'd have to have 1,000 people up here. You know, it's, I've had a tremendous amount of help and support, and I've got a great family, and I grew up in a great community. There was, you know, looking back, I've got these notes. I made this earlier today, and I haven't even started looking at them yet. I'm just wandering through this, but you know, we grew up in a great area where in about a mile radius there's 20 or 30 of us that rode. That's all we did was ride. We rode every day. We didn't know what we were doing, but we just loved riding. And you know, it's funny when you look at how it all gets started and how simple it is. You know, you don't have any idea that it's going to come full circle. I mean, me and my family, we used to come to Medora, you know, and camp and you know, just had a great time. And this country has, you know, such a special place in our heart. And got a little more health issues coming on here. And I thought I was doing good. You know, I didn't think I had any health problems going into this deal. Just had a physical the other day. I passed it, but he must have missed something. But anyway, this week, Wayne Herman had called and we were visiting, and we were talking about the first rodeo Bible camp we were at here. I don't know how long ago. We were pretty young. Wayne and I are close to a year. There's only about 10 months difference in age, you know. And he said we stayed in the basement of a church, and during the rodeo Bible camp, and we were laughing. He said, "Who'd have thought?" You know, I'm not sure what we were doing. We were probably screwing around doing something you shouldn't be doing in the basement of a church at a rodeo Bible camp. But he said, who'd ever thought those two kids playing around down there would end up in the Hall of Fame? And, you know, like I told him, I said, I knew you were going places, but I wasn't sure where I was going at that time. You know, I was just trying to get one caught and get one rode. You know, so I know I only got 10 minutes, and once I get over my health issues, I can talk for a long time about things. But first of all, I want to thank. Well, I want to congratulate all the nominees first. It was an honor for me to be nominated, and then the fact that I got chosen to be inducted, that's a huge honor and blessing. The fact that we get to share this day with Levi Wistis and his family is a huge honor for us. One of the things when Rick called me, he said, I said, Levi getting in was a no-brainer, and the rest of us, I thought we were all, worthy. Whoever would have been chosen, I'd have been fine with it. But he told me that looking back, there's only been 11 people that went in on the first ballot, and it'd be guys like Wayne and Brad and Bob Hansen and Jim Tesher, Elvin Nelson. I'm sure I could think of the others if I had a little bit. And to go in on the first ballot with, that type of resume at that age, that's incredible. So, it's an honor for my family to get to share this day with their family. I want to thank the Hall of Fame, all its members, all its trustees, its staff. And not just because I'm being inducted in the Hall of Fame. Thanks for preserving and growing our Western industry. Because we need that. We're everything that's right with this world. My list is I'm not doing good on my list at all, what I'd planned to say. But I'm just going to roll with it. I want to, the Hall of Fame, and I've always said with the Hall of Fame, there should be a building, any Hall of Fame, there should be a building right next to it that houses all the people that helped you get there. because, goodness, it takes an army. I got to thinking about different times when someone would give us a place to stay, or, let us keep our horses there while we caught a flight somewhere, or we, picked us up at airports, and, just stuff that they did that they get nothing in return, and didn't expect it, And, that's what we do in this industry. That's what we do in this industry. They're, in that same building where you put everybody that helped somebody like me get here, there's got to be a special area for wives, because, and everybody that's, that's been through this deal will understand that, because, just like my wife, I hit the jackpot. She stuck with me through thick and thin, and everybody that knows me knows there was more thin than thick, okay? Like a lot, okay? So, but everybody has that same story. All of us in this industry have that same story, and, it's just, you reflect back and you think of the blessings of friends and family and people that have helped you, and it's a little overwhelming at times when you think about it, but it's, boy, what a blessing, what a blessing, what a ride it's been. A couple people that I have to give a shout out to. When I was 11 or 12 years old, Roger Halverson lived up the road from me, and he let me start coming up and roping with him. And Monty Samick and him roped together, and they helped me a lot with my roping. They started hauling me to ropings when I was 12, 13 years old. I got exposed to a lot of things that really helped me, some things that probably I shouldn't have. But it was good. It was a good start for my career, and that really helped me. The other person that isn't here that I'd really wish he was here is Thor Sandvik. Thor Sandvik has helped more guys like me get started. I got on my first broncs at Thor's, and Duff Myers and Larry and I, we were all best friends, and Larry would call and say, hey, we're running horses in. We'd buzz up there and we'd buck them, and Thor's would open the gate, then get on his pickup horse and come get us, and they had that chicken wire fence kind of, and we'd hit that fence, and it'd kind of bend but not break, and as long as we stayed in the arena, he'd eventually get us, and a lot of times we'd get bucked off, and he'd run them really good horses in, them hoppers in, and we'd get on them, and he'd buck them 2 or 3 times a night when we went. It was more health problems. May need to dial 911 before I get done here. But anyway, no, it was a good life. It was a good time. One of the big things that paved the way for me to, that opened a lot of doors was North Dakota High School Rodeo. It gave me an opportunity to learn how to have success by staying hooked and getting better and working hard and trying and understanding what it's like to get to run one the last day of the year for a championship. And that's something you gotta go through that before you learn how to do that. And North Dakota High School Rodeo made it to where I could go to college, and from there I went on to the professional ranks, and it opened so many doors for me, not only in my career, but the network of people that I know. It's just incredible. What something simple like that did for me. So keep going back here to see how much stuff I've missed. The one big, one thing, and then I'm going to close is, if it wasn't for the Linderman Award, I wouldn't, there's a real good chance I wouldn't be here today, because you take that award off my resume and I fall into a group of a whole bunch of guys just like me, that had some success and maybe didn't have that one little staple win that kind of helps you over some humps. But I'll tell you one quick story about the Linderman Award. When I was in, let's see, it was in two things that happened during that time that really, really stuck with me. In 1988, I was up here amateur rodeoing, and Scott Sellen was healing for me. And Scott was one of the best partners a guy could have, great guy. If I hooked the horns, he cleaned up my messes. I mean, he was just a great partner, great guy. But we were, I think we were at Beulah, and it was one of them, I won the all-around that year in the NDRA and the year before, and things had been going pretty good at those rodeos, and a couple of them rodeos, I'd been real fortunate, and I'd won the calf rope and bronc riding and team roping. And at Beulah, after I was done that day, I was packing my stuff up, and I didn't have great horses, but they were really good at packing stuff, because I'd have a rope can, a rope bag, my bronc saddle, my gear bag, and I'd have it all stacked on them, and I'd be leading them back to the trailer. And a guy named Bill Parker came up to me, and he said, "Man, you need to go win the Linderman." And Bill and I were, I knew Bill, but we weren't close friends or nothing, and I got back to the trailer that day, and I knew what the Linderman was, because Phil Lyon was one of my idols growing up. And I thought, I was sitting there thinking, I was by myself, and I was thinking, he thinks I can win that. And he planted a seed, and I chewed on that for a while, and that next year, that was my goal, was to win the Linderman. That was the first thing I put on my goal list that year. Well, that same year, Scott and I had been rodeoing a bunch, and we'd come from somewhere, a Perf at Crawford, or maybe Mobridge or Bell, I can't remember. We got to Bob and Rose's in the middle of the night. Got up that morning, and I'd been just taking a beating in the bronc ride, and I'd been riding terrible. Them horses had kept getting out of time with me, and we'd been doing pretty good in the roping, and I know Scott was going, "Come on, put that saddle up and let's go." He never said that, but when you buddy with something that's entering 3 events, you don't get traded very good, meaning you don't get set up when you want to. So there was a lot of times we were staying extra places an extra day and going and coming back, and I had my bronc saddle out, and Doug Hansen come over. He was there, and that was kind of the hub where we all stopped, and Doug came over, and of course Doug, I always liked seeing him because he had that big grin on his face, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, "Man, I'm getting the thunder beat out of me. I am not riding very good." And this was in '89, I wasn't qualified for the Linderman yet. I was in my roping events, but not in the bronc riding, and I was starting to think, man, this might not be for me. Because it hadn't been going very good. And I had a really good horse of Corco's that night. And, this was my chance to get qualified in all 3 events. And then after that, once you're qualified in all 3 events, then it's just total money. Well, Doug, he's smiling. I told him, I said, "Man, I'm riding bad, and horses are getting out of time with me, and I'm taking a beating up there." And he helped me adjust my stirrups, and he was just, he just had that kind of charisma and grinning and laughing, and made light of it, and here again, he was helping me, and there wasn't nothing in it for him. Well, that night I won second, and made a pretty good ride, which in the bronc riding, if you've been riding terrible and then you make a pretty good ride, it feels like a great ride. And, that got me qualified. After that, I knew I was qualified, and so the rest of the year, the pressure was off. I knew at the end of the year it was just going to be on total money. And that year I won the Linderman. That's the year I met Bridget. You might ought to call 911. That was a good year. That was a good year. I look back on that, and you look at things that shape your life, and it's pretty crazy. pretty crazy. You know, last thing I'll say, and then I'll get off here. My sister Naomi, one time she told me my dad said the best thing he ever did was buy that first pony. And you know, you think about a little gesture like that, buying a little pony. What if he hadn't bought the pony? You know, I get to thinking about that. I think, geez, what if he hadn't bought that first pony? You know, what am I doing today? I mean, you could argue everything I got's because of that first pony. All right. So, thanks again for everything. I want to thank my family, my friends, everybody here. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Next category is Modern Era Rodeo. Will Meyer will be introducing Clay Bomback, who will talk about Levi Wistis. Will?
Well, thanks everybody for coming. That's a real nice to see Phil and everybody inducted, and Levi and all these people here and old traveling partners of Levi's. It's a great day to be here. You know, Levi was a good friend, and the Wistises, and I grew up with him. You know, my first memories of him are grade school at Johnson's Corners there. They're all out of Keene, and I kind of lived over the other way, and we'd meet, and we'd go to town to Little League and carpool, and you know, you look back on it, you just a lot of great memories from such a great group of people to grow up with. You know, Bo and Levi, we pretty soon you start rodeoing, and high school we rodeoed together, and eventually your Badlands circuit with Bo and Levi, and you couldn't ask for a better family to grow up with, and they're the kind of people that just made you better just being around them. And it didn't matter if it was rodeo or wrestling, they just had every sport they did, it was just the grit and determination that you had. They'd whip you at anything, and they'd just have a smile on their face while they did it. It was just easy. And you know, in the wrestling deal, at the time it was Keene, North Dakota. I don't know how many people there was, maybe 25, maybe 50. I don't know if they depends on if the cafe was open or not at that time. And at that time, all the wrestlers were from Keene that were wrestling for Wofford City, all, you know, in the state. And if you came from there, you know, we'd always say that for the dual championship of the state, it was pretty much Keene. And you know, you had state champions. Bo was 2 years in a row, and Levi held up his title, and Cody Moe and Clay Bomback, who will be up here next. And they all just even the other ones that weren't state champions, there were a lot of them that they just placed high in the state, and the whole community of people that were just unbelievable athletes and worked hard and did great. And Levi rodeoed pretty hard for quite a few years, and I remember one time I asked Julie, you know, I was kind of back home ranching, I didn't go too far, I stayed in the Badlands circuit, and I ran into Julie one time, and I'd always stay in touch with Levi and said, well, what's Levi's plan? And Levi'd always be back, and he'd come run the combine or whatever, always helping in the spring whenever he's back home, and as much as he could, he was putting on a lot of miles. And I said, what's Levi's plan? You know, at that time, he probably maybe, I can't remember what he was, probably 20-something in the world, you know, had been going all over the place. And Julie said, Will, how well do you know Levi? And at that moment, it dawned on me that Levi's going to keep rodeoing until he makes the NFR year after year after year, because he had that determination that would get him there. And so it's great to be here to see Levi get inducted in the Cowboy Hall of Fame, and it's an honor to have known him. And I won't be too long because Clay's got a pretty long speech about Levi. We could all stand up here and tell stories about Levi for all day. You know, it's been he was just a great person. And the Wisnises, I mean, we all could stand up here and talk about the Wisnises all day long and the people they've helped out, including me. I mean, I thought I was in better shape than Phil, but I don't know. But yeah, that's all I got. So here at that same time, another state champion wrestler that was right with him was Clay Bomback. So he can come up here and give his speech. Thanks.
Thank you for that great introduction, Will. I couldn't do this without the Wistis family. Would all the Wisnises please come forward? Milo, Julie, Bo, Chase, your families. We want to see you guys up here. How awesome is this to see everybody that showed up today? Looking over the crowd, there's people coming from all over. There's people that flew here, that traveled through the night last night just to get here. And Levi's got some of his traveling partners here in attendance. We got Clay Cowan and Jake Reinhardt. They had some of the best experiences with Levi and traveled down the road with him, and how fortunate they were to have him as a traveling partner. Well, I couldn't be more proud than to come forward this day with this gracious, humble family to accept this honor for Levi Wisnis, his induction into the modern era rodeo category of the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame. First off, I'd like to thank everyone for gathering and celebrating this accomplishment with us. And congratulations to Phil Hogan on your induction into the category. There was a lot of great nominations this year, but these two are very deserving Cowboys. What an honor to put Levi's name in the history books as one of North Dakota's greatest Cowboys. This really puts an exclamation mark on his rodeo career. Levi's looking down on us today with his great big smile, as he'd be very humbled to receive this honor. I'd like to thank Media Director Wild Bill with the Cowboy Chronicles, the podcast, and Rick Thompson with Talk Radio for all the work that you guys do in social media, interviewing Cowboys going down the road. Your interviews with Levi are heartwarming and a special keepsake of Levi. Levi was a true testament, and just as he showed us, and as Levi stated in an interview, it's really beneficial to know that when you put everything into something, you expect to get a reward out of it. It might take a while, but the bottom line is hopefully it does for you, and that's what makes it all worthwhile. Levi turned his dreams into a reality, putting all the time and hard work in to earn this prestigious honor. I wish that he was standing here today being recognized as one of North Dakota's distinguished Cowboys. Besides, he'd be much better for all of you to look at and listen to. When it comes to sincere thank yous, in an interview, Levi stated, "Oh boy, I can't thank enough people. There's been people all over the state of North Dakota and all over the country that helped me get to where I am today." I know he enjoyed the time that he spent with the Cowboys that he bunked with on the Fulton Ranch throughout his professional career. He'd like to thank Jake, Jared, and John Fulton, Bo Brown, Matt Elliott, Trevor Eppert, Clint Dull, Tyler Fagerhaug, Chad Pelster, Jason Miller, and Kurt Leduc for all the great times you guys shared. What a great bunch of Cowboys. I'd like to thank Jim Cullum, Jim Whiting, and Butch Tinnant for getting behind Levi and showing your support as he rodeoed and lived on the Fulton Ranch. Levi stated that he was very fortunate to travel with some of the greatest bulldoggers going down the road, and he'd like to thank them for all the good times they shared during his professional career. That would be guys such as Clay Cowan, Tyler Haugen, Todd Soon, Dane Hanna, Bo Franzen, Jake Reinhardt, Jason Miller, Sean Mulligan, and Dean Gorsuch. These Cowboys said they thoroughly enjoyed traveling with laid-back Levi. Levi had such a laid-back approach to life, but yet he could really get after it and take care of business when business called. Thank you to Sean Mulligan as he continues to put on a nothing-but-try steer wrestling jackpot in Coleman, Oklahoma, awarding scholarships to students in memory of Levi. Thank you, Dean Gorsuch, a two-time world champion Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame inductee, for graciously giving your NFR go-around buckle to the Wistis family to honor Levi. Levi would have said, "You were just lucky, Dean, that he wasn't there competing to take that go-around away from you." I'd like to thank Rusty Christofferson, Nathan Brenna, Tyler Hogan, and Lisa Fulton for your wonderful testimonials on Levi's behalf for the Hall of Fame induction. Thank you, Lisa, for being a second mother to Levi and the Cowboys as they bunked at your place and trained with your husband, Brian Fulton. I'd like to thank Eva Hepper. She's a trustee in District 2 for all the time and work she put into Levi's induction process. Eva is sure loved by the rodeo community from all over, and they really enjoyed having her when she was their NDRA rodeo secretary. Jeff and Eva are currently cheering their daughters on at the National Finals Rodeo. Their daughter Abby is sitting 5th in the average at the CNFR and will compete in the short go tonight. They will then be traveling to follow their daughter Carrie at the upcoming Junior High National Finals Rodeo this upcoming week in Des Moines, Iowa. I'd like to say good luck to all the North Dakota contestants competing in the National Finals Rodeo this week. Pull down your hat and go make a run in honor of Coy Lane Hepper. I'd like to thank Ike Crimmins, a family friend of Wistis's, for all your help with Levi's induction process. Ike is a great cowboy, veteran, and trustee from District 9. Thanks, Ike, for all you've done over the years and the dedication and support you continue to bring forth for the sport of rodeo and the Hall of Fame. I'd like to thank Jessica Weldon for all your contributions in Levi's induction process. Jessica is an outstanding cowgirl and friend of the Wistis family that traveled and competed in rodeo throughout the same era as Levi. A few great cowboys that were influential on Levi becoming a great professional steer wrestler that I'd like to mention and thank are Willard and Craig Keason from Keene, North Dakota, and Brian Fulton from Valentine, Nebraska. The Keasons, located in Blue Buttes, they opened up their arena for everyone that wanted to come over and practice and have a good time. They helped everyone get in the communities and surrounding communities get their start in rodeo. Out of college, Levi lived with Brian and Lisa Fulton. Brian Fulton was very instrumental to Levi and many other cowboys in the rodeo arena. Brian was a 2-time NFR qualifier. Cowboy in the PRCA. Brian was a mentor to Levi, and he lived, trained, and learned from Brian over the course of 6 years. Levi, most importantly, would especially have wanted me to thank this family standing here beside me, that he was blessed to grow up in, who were a large part in shaping Levi into the man he was. Thank you, Wistises, for the opportunity, support, and love that you all give and share. I'd like to introduce the Wistis family, who've been a long-standing involved family in the rodeo community. I'm honored to introduce this wonderful family. Levi's father, Milo. Milo wore out many Ford pickup trucks hauling the boys and their horses to practice and rodeos. We could always count on Milo being at practice to run the rope and chute for everyone. Besides mounting his own sons on great horses, Milo and Levi mounted many other cowboys on their dogging horses over the years, and Milo was always there for a haze if you needed one. Levi's mother, Julie. Julie spent many hours preparing for rodeos. Besides making sure her boys had a clean pair of Wranglers to wear, she timed runs with a stopwatch and announced from the crow's nest. She spent many long hours before and after the rodeos with entries and recording results as the North Dakota High School Rodeo Association secretary. Milo and Julie, you did a fantastic job raising these fine cowboys. Levi stated in an interview, as far as my parents, I can't say enough about them. They've helped me 110%. They stood behind me all the way and brought me up to follow your dreams and do what you want to do. Well, thankful for Levi, he didn't have to look very far to find someone tough to challenge him. He was fortunate to have his older brother, Bo, who was one of the toughest cowboys in the nation, to push him. Bo was admired as a hero who was hard to beat in every aspect. He was the gentle giant, always so humble and nice, while he dominated and beat his competition. Bo was a 2-time state wrestling champion, and he holds the North Dakota Class B state record at 189 pounds, with the most pins by weight class, pinning everyone that he wrestled throughout the season, going 38-0 with 38 pins his senior year in 1998. He was a force to reckon with as a fullback on the football team, and they won a runner-up state title. Bo won state high school championships in his rodeo events with steer wrestling and roping. He also went down and won a go-around at the National Finals High School Rodeo. After college, Bo finished up his rodeo career and headed back to the family farm and ranch to settle down with his beautiful wife, Heather. Heather grew up in Falkton, South Dakota. Somehow, Bo was lucky enough to snag her, and they fell in love at SDSU in Brookings, South Dakota. They reside near Keene and have 4 awesome children who are following their parents' footsteps as they're excelling in all of their activities and athletics. They have 3 pretty daughters, Amelia, Clara, and Hazel, and a handsome son, Charlie. I also have a son named Jack Charles, and I know of many other parents that were proud to pass Levi's name on as well. Here we have Levi's younger, adventurous brother, Chase. He is a very talented young man. Levi loved showing the ropes of life to Chase growing up, and Chase was always there to support and cheer Levi on. It's hard to beat Chase's humble character and the inspirational man that he is. I'm glad to see that he is grounded here today, as you can often find him flying high through North Dakota's clear blue skies and buzzing houses with his plane just to say hello. And Chase's beautiful wife, Morgan. She grew up near Newell, South Dakota. Somehow Chase was lucky enough to catch her eye, and they fell in love at the McKenzie County Fair in Watford City, and I believe someone wrote a country love song about their love story. They reside near Keene with their cute, adorable daughter, Carsey. There's something to say about these pretty South Dakota women that Bo and Chase both fell head over heels for. Also, Levi's grandmother, Gladys Wistis, who is 103 years strong today, watching today's induction from the Good Shepherd home in Watford City. Good afternoon, Gladys. It is wonderful to see the involvement of this family and all the organizations that you have been a part of in your community. Thank you, Wistises, for everything you do and showing your support and always giving back. Thank you for your generosity in the scholarships, trophies, buckles, and all the high school steer wrestling trophy saddles that you have sponsored to reward cowboys and cowgirls on their achievements to commemorate Levi. The Wistis family can attest that the great thing about rodeo is all the great people that we run across and all the lasting friendships that we all create. I've been fortunate to be a friend of this Wistis family. Everyone that crossed Levi's path and knew him considered him to be a great friend. He was such a hardworking, humble, and positive guy. He was a lot of fun to hang around, and he made a lasting impression on everyone. While he was very competitive, he was also very supportive of everyone else and enjoyed seeing others earn success. He was a champion in and outside of the arena. Levi pursued his dreams from a young age. He loved riding rough stock, and as he grew, that passion turned to steer wrestling. He didn't just want to be as good as the guys that he looked up to. He took life by the horns and was self-driven to be as good or better than the guys that he looked up to. Levi didn't make excuses for himself when he came up short. He went back to work to become the man that he envisioned. In the sport of wrestling, Levi looked up to guys that worked hard in the practice room and earned championships. Levi, too, envisioned himself standing at the top of that podium. In high school, Levi became a wrestling state champion for the Watford City Wolves, coached by Dave Doherty, Frank Fish, and Robin Schwartz. Bo and Levi reigned champions of the Class B 189-pound weight class division for 3 consecutive years. Bo won state in 97 and 98, and Levi came and finished up in 99. Levi was a dominating wrestler and leader for the Wolves, and the Watford City Wrestling Tournament became known as the Levi Wistis Classic in honor of Levi. Levi's tough, determined mindset and work ethic carried over to the rodeo arena, where he won a steer wrestling state championship. In the practice pen, he trained with his father and brother. Levi was also a driving force on the football field, and he led the Wolves to a state championship in 1999, coached by Fred Fridley. Levi continued to pursue his dreams in college rodeo, and he became a national intercollegiate steer wrestling champion in 2003. He went on to be crowned the champion of the PRCA Badlands circuit in 2004 and was on a roll, making his mark in the PRCA. Climbing the world standings, sitting 5th in the PRCA, winning many rodeos on the Wrangler Pro Rodeo Tour, he would not have stopped at anything less than becoming a world champion. And who knows how many times over with all the talent and try that he possessed. You could always find Levi helping others when he wasn't making his own run at the rodeo. You could also find him in his big smile, sitting down with someone just having a visit. Levi was a hero as he inspired young cowboys and cowgirls that were up and coming and sat down to listen and took advice from the older generation of cowboys. Levi really enjoyed competing at rodeos close to home in front of the great fans in the state of North Dakota. He also enjoyed venturing out to new destinations. A memorable conversation was Levi called me from the Ladder Buck Room in the Pendleton, Oregon. There was a lot of excitement expressed in his voice about competing there. He loved the authenticity of the rodeo and the sheer toughness that you had to bring. With the long score giving the steer a head start of a dead run of 60 feet from the back of the box to the barrier, then jumping that steer to throw him in the grassy field without that sandy soil to dig your heels into. Levi was truly doing what he loved. We've all shared many great times and memories with Levi that make us smile. But not to worry, there's going to be many great more times to come. There's some good news that I always enjoy hearing. Just as Pat Day had said earlier, it comes from the Gospel of John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I don't think I have to remind everyone that our time on this earth is short, and that we can all look forward to living in an everlasting life. I encourage everyone to strive and live by Jesus Christ's teachings and follow the example that he set before us. Someday we would all like to trade in our spurs for wings. And speaking on behalf of Levi and the lessons he taught us, I encourage everyone to work towards living a fulfilled, abundant life full of purpose, potential, love, and joy. As Levi encouraged everyone to use as Levi loved rodeo and didn't hesitate to go after his dreams, I encourage everyone to use your God-given talents to pursue your dreams, whatever they may be. Put in the time and hard work as Levi did to make your dreams a reality. Be inspiring and always look for the best in others. Be self-motivated, because success doesn't just come knocking on your doorstep. You have to go out and earn it. Set your goals high and start reaching for your dreams today. For if you wait until tomorrow, you'll be another day further behind. For we don't know what tomorrow holds, but we know who holds tomorrow. I'd like to encourage everyone to learn how to live like Levi. We have all been thrown curveballs in life. It's how you receive those curveballs and swing back, moving forward, making the most of life. Levi was thrown some very hard curveballs, yet he remained so positive. Given the diagnosis of a brain tumor, he talked about how much smarter he was going to be after brain surgery. Having complications with double vision and having to wear an eye patch, after surgery, he said that he was now a pirate of the Caribbean. He would not want anyone to dwell on life setbacks, but rather enjoy the moment of living today and being thankful for what you have and making the most of it. We also need to learn how to live like his brother Chase, this hero sitting here next to me. This very talented, athletic young man was thrown a hard curveball in life. Just after completion of his sophomore year in high school, he was a buckled passenger in the back seat of a car accident that left him paralyzed. That didn't change Chase's attitude towards life or slow him down from living his dreams, as he is now married to his beautiful wife, Morgan, chasing around his daughter, Carsey, farming and ranching, riding horseback, and flying airplanes. He's one of the most humble, positive guys that I could surround myself with. This family is a family of heroes. There was something that we all should be very proud of. Each night as I turned the television to watch the National Finals Rodeo of the PRCA, before every rodeo performance, the cowboys and spectators were not afraid to take a moment of silence and bow their head in prayer. There was a memorial grand opening at the NFR displaying an illuminated cross with the song Amazing Grace to honor heroes of the NFR and the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. They mentioned the excitement of having the Holy Spirit where it is sent and received to connect us with God, Jesus Christ, and our loved ones. What a blessing for us to have. What other professional sport is proud to televise and broadcast their faith on national television? Before every performance at the NFR, everyone in attendance stood tall and proud and paid their respect in honoring our flag during the national anthem. For Cowboys know the importance of Jesus Christ, our nation's flag, and what they stand for. That's what I call being a true professional. It's awesome to see these great core values that continue to hold true to the cowboy culture. It's also great to see the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame honoring our veterans. Veterans, thank you for your service and our freedoms. I'd like to thank the Executive Director, Rick Thompson, and his crew at the Hall, the Board of Directors, and all the trustees for all your effort and hard work that you bring to the Hall of Fame, bringing it up to where it is today, honoring many of North Dakota's heroes. This induction has been a great tribute to Levi. If there was something that Levi was extremely proud of, it was his roots, which is his family standing here beside me and where Levi came from. Although Levi lived out of state as he traveled down the road, I was always excited that he used his parents' home address in Keene, North Dakota when he entered rodeos, as Keene, North Dakota was where he was proud to represent and call home. Our rodeo friends of Levi reminded me that while traveling around the country to rodeos, Levi would stop and he'd ask others, have you ever been to North Dakota? And then he'd stop and ask, have you ever been to Keene, North Dakota? If they hadn't, he said, well, you're going to have to take a trip to God's country to go see such a beautiful place. Now, if you're watching today's induction ceremonies from afar, I ask, have you ever been to Medora, North Dakota? Have you ever visited the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame? Someday you're going to have to take a trip to visit this beautiful place, because I'm proud to say that a great cowboy and our great friend, Levi Wistis, has been inducted into the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Levi. We're proud and excited to celebrate another one of your great accomplishments, and thank you for bringing us all together today to celebrate this special day. Just as Levi finished an interview, he stated, thanks a lot, everybody, and you guys take care. Can I get a round of applause for Levi and the Wistis family?
Next category is pre-1940s ranching. Judy Jacobson will introduce Brent Schwann, who will talk about James Mac Ullman.
Hello, I would like to ask my cousins to come up, please. And Brent might as well come up too. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Judy Jacobson, and these are my three cousins who are also the granddaughters to Letty Kellogg, who is a member of the Cowboy Hall of Fame. And today we're going to have the honor and the privilege to get to see our great-grandfather, her father, inducted into the Cowboy Hall of Fame. This, the oldest is Arnold Steiner, then we have David Steiner, and we have Bob Steiner. And the thing that's so amazing about Mac is I've got to do all the research and find out all the information about him. He came because of a business venture failure. And by the time he left, he was a success beyond words. So you can turn a success into an amazing, amazing opportunity. The other thing that is so cool for me is my great-grandfather bought land in 1907 that we get to farm today with our sixth generation, my grandchildren. And so the same land that he foreseen as being valuable is the land that is bringing us great opportunity too. And so his endeavors is continuing on every day for us. And that's what's so amazing is for all of us, is we get to see the value of what we do today carried on to our grandchildren. So, Brent?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real honor to be able to tell you the story of Mac Ullman, to represent the family, to be here amongst people that are so amazing. Some of them I know, some of them I don't. But it's a great event, and I'm proud to be here. James Mac Ullman, more affectionately known as Mac, was born on April 11th, 1954 in Chelsea, Nova Scotia. And he married Millie Dean Janes in March of '78. Moved to River Falls, Wisconsin in 1984 with a large group of family members and became a United States citizen 2 years later. In those early years, Mac worked in a lumber and pulp industry in Nova Scotia, and he was a horse breeder and sales business in Wisconsin with his brother. 1891 was a turning point in Mac's life. After the failed business venture that Judy mentioned, he decided to head west to the unorganized areas of the Missouri River in modern-day McKenzie County, North Dakota. The decision in that area led Mac to a life in which he became a truly historic figure in western North Dakota cattle ranching. It was a great honor that the trustees of the North Dakota Hall of Fame have voted to memorialize his contributions to the cattle industry and the cowboy lifestyle. In 1891, he took that trip to Dickinson, North Dakota, and traveled north to the Missouri River, not knowing what this venture would bring or if he would even survive it. He left his family in Wisconsin so his children could continue their education. And initially, he came here to trap beaver and participate in the beaver pelt trade, which was very lucrative at that time. While he was beaver trapping, he ran into a number of cowboys. Most notably, it would have been cowboys from the Landers and Green Cattle Company and James and Joseph Stroud that likely had the most influence on him. And he began to learn the cattle industry and the cattle trade. In 1891, the Strouds established what is currently known as the Birdhead Ranch in northern Mackenzie County. In 1892, the Strouds sold that ranch to Landers and Green, and in 1893, James Ullman, Mac, established the Morningstar Cattle Company with several brothers-in-law, Elijah, Robert, Cornelius James, and Jeffrey Hanley, and a nephew, Thad Ullman. They purchased 800 to 900 head of cattle and about 1,000 tons of hay for the winter. The Morningstar Cattle Company used the Birdhead brand, which is still in use today by Mac's great-great-grandson and my good friend Dustin Siner. It is the oldest registered brand in North Dakota. Mac faced many challenges from both man and nature in his quest to become a cattleman. When they started losing a lot of cattle to coyotes and wolves, he started breeding greyhound dogs. He'd keep 12 to 14 of them on the ranch at all times, and he would use those dogs to keep predators from killing cattle on the ranch. In 1 year, those dogs killed approximately 350 coyotes and 37 big gray wolves. When Mac started realizing that a shipment of cattle that the Morningstar Cattle Company had received in Weevil, Montana, were losing weight because of lice, flies, and grubs, he designed a way to dip the cattle. He used a line camp that he had established in modern-day Alexander, North Dakota, used the water from the Ragged Butte Spring that still runs in Alexander, and actually if you stop at the Ragged Butte Spring, you will see some of the story of this cattle dip at the Ragged Butte Spring. They had designed a trench that was 75 feet long, 5 feet wide, and 8 feet deep, and it had a galvanized steel slide going into the trench. They would bring the cows over to this slide, they'd go down the slide into a creosote and water mixture, and they were forced to swim through that, thus being dipped, and it would kill these parasites, increasing the health and the weight of his cattle. When Mac started realizing that he had lost some cattle to some rustlers, he trailed them for many days and approximately 85 miles before finally losing them in the Badlands. But he went to Sheriff Goodall in Dickinson, who knew Mac, and he deputized Mac and created a posse of 9 men to run down these rustlers. They had went about 60 miles or so over towards Weevil, Montana, before they located them. Shots were fired, and a pretty desperate, shady character named James McPeak, a rustler of the times, was killed in that exchange. Mac had to provide testimony in the investigation, and it led to charges against a pretty significant Montana cattleman who was charged with buying stolen stock and selling to parties out west. When Mac felt that the railroads were treating cattlemen in the area unfairly, giving them a raw deal, he set out to find different ways of marketing those cattle and transporting the cattle for better delivery and selling prices. He brought suit against the Great Northern and Northern Pacific railroads for damages that those railroads done to the cattle while they were waiting. He really believed in keeping everybody accountable. After 11 years with the Morningstar Cattle Company, Mac sold his interest and homesteaded on land east of Watford City near Schaefer. That ranch was called the EIL after the brand that he used. And it was at this time that he finally brought his family back out from Wisconsin. And they built a log house and settled down out there. In August of 1905, they established one of the first schools in the area. And Mac's daughter was actually the first teacher. So his influence went well beyond the cattle industry in Mackenzie County, and education of children was very important to him and the family. Around 1907, Mac traded that Schaefer property for the property that Judy mentioned at Demick Lake, where they still run their cattle, get hay from their cattle. It was a great hay area, had a really nice running spring, and Mac believed that taking care of your cattle in the wintertime was a really big deal, and he used to brag to his children that he did not believe in letting his cattle eat snowballs. So around that same time, he purchased some additional land north of Alexander, actually just to the east of the Morning Star Cattle Company, and began building the ranch of his dreams. Mac's wife Millie homesteaded some of the land just south of the purchased land, and that's where he would spend the rest of his life. He secured a 99-year water lease with the federal government on a spring that was about a half a mile from the new buildings. And lumber was plentiful those days because there was no Lake Sakakawea. It was river bottom property. And so he, with his knowledge from his old logging days, he built a new barn and corral system with alleyways and a working squeeze chute. He just felt it was better for both man and animal to run them through that way. It was Mac's goal to start a quality saddle horse raising program. And with the knowledge he had obtained out in Wisconsin with his horse breeding program, he knew where the best were and where to go. And so after his barn and corrals were built, Mac made a trip to Louisville, Kentucky, where he purchased a thoroughbred stallion and 4 thoroughbred mares. Mac's good breeding lines were evidence in many of Mackenzie County's saddle horses for several years. And according to a Pennsylvania newspaper dated 1911, Mac Ullman had done more perhaps than any other man for the Slope County in advancing high-grade and thoroughbred stock raising, but this work was carried on so quietly that few realized its extent. Cattle by the trainload grazed on his ranch, and his horses included 2 distinct classes, trotting and draft stock. His foundation stock originated in the famous horse breeding sections of Kentucky, and his draft horses were principally of the Percheron breed. Mac began realizing the need for more draft horses out in Mackenzie County as more people were homesteading and farming. And in 1911, he made plans to travel to Europe to look for draft horses. And so in 1911, he left North Dakota, sold some of his cattle, and was carrying letters of credit to buy horses in Europe. They visited horse shows and stock farms, buying horses of the finest quality until 29 head had been purchased. Mac headed home with plans to return the following year and purchase more Belgians. He really fell in love with the Belgian horse breed. He was very excited about a few of those horses in particular. One was named Flavian Duval. He was like a 3-year-old stallion, described as very big boned and an extraordinary good mover, a real beauty. He also had a black filly, Charnot, which had never lost in a show she had been entered, and a Belgian stallion named Bismarck was one that he wanted to show off and bring home to North Dakota to cross and make a great horse crossbreed of horses. The purchases were completed by November 16th, and they set out for America with the horses and gifts for the family. Mac was so excited about these new purchases that he wanted to display them at the International Livestock Exhibit at the Chicago World Fair that year. And, but in order to get there, they would have to take an express train. The horsemen had to stay in the wooden horse cars with the horses to groom them and keep them quiet. Unfortunately, on a foggy morning, December 6, 1911, a disaster happened. A freight train and that express train collided, sending the train down a 20-foot embankment, drawing the horse cars along. The ranchmen were scalded and crushed by the horses. Mac was among the dead. North Dakota Lieutenant Governor Usher Burdick traveled immediately to the site on behalf of the Ullman family. Mac's remains were identified and returned home for the burial just a few months prior to his 58th birthday. Mac lived life to the fullest, never being afraid to push his dreams to another level. At his death, newspaper accounts credited the worth of his estate at $250,000. Diligence, innovation, and foresight brought Mac Ullman a small fortune within a few short years in the rugged and remote West. People also remembered Mac in the newspaper as a good provider for family and ranch hands alike. He was a hard worker, a keen businessman, possessing uncommon foresightedness. He is remembered by some as an ambitious man with a no-nonsense approach to business life. Though he presented a stern demeanor, he really was a kindly man in many ways. He loved children, and they were invariably drawn to him by some invisible magnetic quality. Mac never got to see the house on the ranch finished. he had left before it was done. It was completed in 1912 and had water running throughout the house because of that spring that he had secured from the federal government previously. Mac Ullman's love for cattle, horses, and the land found in McKenzie County is alive in his descendants today that carry on the tradition of raising high-quality beef cattle. The sixth generation of Ullmans is carrying on that same values that Mac taught his children. A letter written to the family by Emery H. Joy about Mac's last days in Europe summed up his life nicely. It read in part, "It is a pity when coming to a last and fatal moment, all is destroyed and was done in the past. That which has so much promise for the future, he is the straightest man we had ever dealt with. I look at the Lord calls them deemed to be worthy. I know he was prepared to appear before the one who granted him a few years in this world where his memory will never be forgotten." Bob Seiner would like to say a few words on behalf of the family now.
Thank you, Brent. As a great-grandson of Mac Ullman, on behalf of the lineage of Mac, a sincere, heartfelt thank you to the Board of Trustees of the Cowboy Hall of Fame who voted for Mac and all who made this event possible. Mac lived his life as a visionary, implementing perseverance, hard work, honesty, and a love of this land and its people. Mac set a standard that helped forge Western North Dakota into the land and lifestyle we love. Allowing his story to live on in the beautiful halls of the Cowboy Hall of Fame is truly a blessing. A huge thank you to the family and friends that put countless hours into researching and organizing this presentation of Mac's life. Walking through the Cowboy Hall of Fame for the first time in the late 1990s left a huge impression on me. Seeing the leathered, worn, sometimes toothless faces of the honorees and reading their stories brought life to their life's journey. It is these individuals that help tame and shape this area, the West, and whom many of us are today. Hence, a sincere thank you to the board and support groups that help preserve these incredible stories of Western culture amongst the distraction of present-day wokeness. I wish all could experience the long hours, the bruises, calluses, sore muscles that come with the rigors of ranching, rodeo, beef, and livestock production. On the other hand, I wish all Americans could experience the sweet smell of tack and horse after a summer ride, looking into a cow pony's soft eyes, trailing a herd to fresh pasture, watching a wobbly-legged newborn calf suck for the first time, or wrestling calves at a branding, or even sitting 10 to 12 hours on a dump break. These events change everything. Unfortunately, few will experience this, but your work here at the Cowboy Hall of Fame is help preserving a Western culture that would quickly be lost without it. The importance of your work at the Cowboy Hall of Fame cannot be overstated. Blessings for all you do. This is Americana. Protect and preserve it. Thank you.
Modern Era Ranching, John Warburg will introduce Steve Brooks, who will hopefully adhere to our 10-minute time frame.
Yesterday afternoon, I cornered Brooks for a minute down at the hall, and I said, "Steve," I said, "is there anything you'd like me to say or not say?" And he promptly said, "John, keep in mind, I get the mic after you." So with that, this is going to be very brief. When you look at the title, Modern Era Rancher, I can't think of anyone that deserves it more than Steve. From the standpoint, you take a man that spends 150, 160 days a year on a horse, and I'll bet you he spends at least 300, 350 days a year on the computer taking care of that ranch. With that, I'd like to introduce Steve Brooks.
Well, thank you, John. First of all, I'd like to thank the Cowboy Hall of Fame for this honor, and it means a lot. We went through that COVID stuff. I hope I'm not catching what Phil and them guys are getting, but anyway, it's been a while since I had a suit coat on or talked to a group of people. About 5-6 years. There's a few years I did a lot of it, but anyway, and I'm kind of glad to be back to just ranching and not going to board meetings and a lot of other stuff. But anyway, I'd like to thank the hall. I'd like to thank the trustees and the board, and I'd like to thank John and Warburg and Bill Lohman for nominating me, and also those two, and Larry White and Gene Harris for speaking for me at the annual meeting. My wife couldn't be here today. She did a commitment. My oldest daughter is a nurse in Seattle, and she was on maternity leave for 6 months, and back in January when she had our third grandchild, my wife committed that when she went back to work, she'd go out and babysit the first 2 weeks, and so that's where she's at, so she's not here today. But two of my daughters are here, Cassie and Callie. Wave your arms over there. They're Skeeter and Cassie. It's that thing Phil started. It's in the air. But anyway, my mother's here, Noelle, and my older sister Jen and sister Jill, and my brother Ryan and my brother Larry's over here, and Cassie's husband Levi, and some more of them. I'm not going to introduce them all. But anyway, as some of you know, our ranch started, my great-great-grandfather homesteaded probably about 50 miles southeast of here in 1905. In 1907, my great-grandfather Claude Brooks came, his son-in-law, and homesteaded about 5 miles away. Where we currently live, my grandpa moved up there and bought some land in 1928 and started adding land, and my dad and my Uncle Howard and Eugene got into it. They added more, and then Eugene got out, and then family was getting bigger, and they kept adding, and nobody was selling anything in our area, so they started 25 miles west, and they bought a ranch, and it just happened that a couple more come up for sale in that same area, and they got a pretty sizable chunk over there. 1983, my brother and my cousin and I bought a ranch right across the highway. First time something pretty big in our township had ever sold, and it was stretched us out pretty thin, and my dad and uncle were going to kind of help us, and a month later my dad died of a heart attack at 51 years old. And so we struggled for a little while, but we put it together, and in 2001 we split. My cousin took the West Ranch, and my brother and I are still together, and we've added quarters and half sections and got it all in one chunk. We're down to 800-acre deal we're right into now that sits in the middle of it that we've wanted. A cousin of mine said he's my same age, he's going to sell, and my daughter Skeeter and nephew Carter are going to buy that, so we'll have her all put together finally. My dad was a really good mentor. He was a good businessman. He was a good farmer. He was a good cattleman. He wasn't a very good horseman. He had a sore back, and he didn't like riding, and he got us some ponies, and we grew up and got going, and my older sister Jan and I, and as soon as we were old enough to move cattle, he quit riding, and we learned how to trim hooves and do stuff on our own, but it led us into rodeoing, and I was telling somebody last night, they let us go, but we're kind of on our own. I can remember going to a high school rodeo with a 1962 GMC pickup with a short box. About 6 of us in it, and a 2-horse trailer. We took the canvas top off so we'd get 3 horses, two facing forward and 1 backwards, and those horses got used in every event. We all shared them. We shared bareback riggings and bull ropes and bronc saddles, and by the time I was a senior in high school, Clark Spethman gave us 40 bucking horses, and we practiced a couple nights a week. and Clark flanked him. There were no other parents there. We had one high school kid who was a pickup man, which he didn't have to work too hard. And I remember one night we bucked what he called the deep creek strut, and he was pretty rank. Bucked him 4 times, never took the rigging off him. 4 different guys got on him, nobody got by 2 jumps. But anyway, by the time I graduated from high school, we had 28 kids from Bowman High School riding rough stock at high school rodeos, and a few of us made it to nationals, and we went there with no parents. Probably should have had some along, maybe, I don't know, but we got through it. Got into college, and I think today's the first time since I left college that my 4 roommates are all together: Rick Thompson, John Warburg, and Roger Jacobs over here. There was a time I didn't know if those 3 were going to go far, but they all been pretty successful in life. But anyway, my dad really didn't care for rodeo, and he thought you ought to be in the hayfield and working, but he would let us go some, and I said always when I got in these registered Angus business and going, I wish he would have lived long enough, because I saw a lot of bulls to people I met through the rodeo and in the college and in that part of it, and a lot of times they're driving by 10 places that AI did the same bull we did, but they don't know them. It's a people business, and it all kind of comes together. Dad was active on a lot of boards, and he kind of told me and my brother, you get involved in what you're in, and I really don't care for farming. My brother does all that. I do the cows, and so he's been pretty active on a lot of state and national boards through the crops part of it, and as I got through and served on American Angus board and Certified Angus Beef board, always learned something on them. It's something you could bring home with you and kind of be going towards the future and new ideas and innovations. And so in the long run, it really paid off, but it was a lot of days gone too. And we were fortunate to have a lot of good people work for us over the years. And one thing my dad kind of started, somebody been there quite a while, you let them run some cows. Well, we started the deal, if you've been there a year, then you can run some registered cows and run a few more each year you're there, and so I'd give our employees a vested interest in the deal, because a lot of times you're calving in the middle of the night or you're AIing on Sunday, and not a lot of days off, so we've always let people own some cows, and we've had some state guys that work for us for 15 and 20 years because of it, I think, and they took a real interest in it. I guess with that, I don't have a whole lot more to say. Some things I just kind of looking back on it. In 4 miles south of our place is Cottage School, and they built it in 1913. My grandpa went to school there, and he said they're putting the roof on. I don't know if he was in 8th grade. I don't know where he got the first 7 grades at, but they're putting a roof on, and then my dad and my uncles went there, and then me and my brothers and sisters went there, and my 2 oldest daughters went there for a couple of years before it finally got closed down. So we're kind of hicks when we started high school, but first football game I dressed for is the first one I'd ever seen. First wrestling match I was in was the first one I ever seen. Yeah. So it is a learning experience, but made a lot of friends and a lot of ties, and it all come together, and it's been great. This whole heritage in North Dakota and the Cowboy Hall of Fame, one of the neat things about it is we don't have a lot of people here, and through ranching and rodeoing and the things that go together, we're all tied together. It's amazing to me how many people I know here, and when you get traveling, it amazed me. The year I was president of the American Angus Association, I was gone 167 days, and I never got in the airport. I didn't run into somebody I knew, even in Argentina. We were over there and we were getting off in Buenos Aires, and here's some Hereford breeders from Montana getting on the plane coming back from Uruguay. So you run into them all. I was over in Russia a few years. We sold quite a few bulls for 3 years there, and we got off in Washington or New York to switch planes, and ran into 3 or 4 different people that I knew. But it's a small world. Even though we don't have too many people here, you get around, but it's been a neat deal, and all the people in this and the heritage that goes with it. And I think the Hall of Fame is a great thing to keep this history, to get it passed down. I was fortunate in our township, my great-grandmother and a bunch of people that had homesteaded there and lived there put a book together for the township and printed it about 1960. And it wasn't too many more years, and they were all gone. And it was pretty neat. They documented that and did it. It was. I read it the day before I come, looking stuff back up, getting dates right on our ranch and what happened and everything they go through. But anyway, I better quit. He said you'd make it short, and I'm just going to use a friend of mine. He's gone now. Dale Davis had to give a talk once, and he said we. Back in the day, our ancestors started with nothing, and we still got some of it. So thanks.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I'd also like to thank my gal pal Jill, who's been with me all the time for the last year and a half as we run around the state and the country. And everybody travel safe. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you again for coming out. Enjoy the beauty of the Badlands and the friendship of all of us. Thank you.